today. I could tell you the stories of the turbulent danger that we face and the sacrifices that led to our escape here. But in the interest of time, I will share with you the abridged version of my family's journey. I came into this world in a hospital, not surrounded by the comfort of a bassinet, but rather by the sound of persistent shelling. With the assistance of a CIA agent with connections to the airport, my family was given the opportunity to flee the country by plane shortly before the airports were bombed to prevent escape. As to not alert would-be spies, we were snuck into the airport in clandestine fashion in specially marked vans. There, we sat in a large hangar, awaiting direction, not knowing if at any given moment we would be turned over to the North Vietnamese. Assuredly, my father, who would have been placed in a communist re-education camp due to his time fighting alongside the Americans against the North and due to his time spent in the US for his education. Every moment was one of fear and trepidation, surrounded by chaos. Eventually, my family was boarded onto buses, and we were immediately instructed that once the doors opened, to run with every ounce of our strength towards a C-130 cargo plane still pulling forward on the runway. Hundreds of refugees sprinted frantically, men and women with babies and children. The wind from the jets were so powerfully pushing back with such force that many couldn't even stand. We were flanked by United States Marines who were trying to protect us to the best of their ability. And as the cargo plane doors closed, that would be the last semblance that we would ever see of our nation once free. There were no seats in this completely gutted cargo plane that normally held a payload of about 100 troops, now holding over 300 people. Wall to wall were people seated on the floor or standing, such as my father, who held me on nearly one leg for the duration of the flight. There was no air conditioning. It was sweltering hot at low temperatures, which then traversed into freezing cold temperatures as we hit 30,000 feet. During a flight which lasted for nearly 3 hours, my father was uncertain as to whether or not I was still dead or alive, as I was only a 6-week-old infant. We were flown to Clark Air Base, eventually to Wake Island, and then to Camp Pendleton. Here, young Marines were tasked with clearing fields of grass to set up refugee camps. Some of us would be housed in tents, others would be housed in corrugated steel structures known as Quonset huts. These Marines provided supplies and fed the thousands of displaced, doing so with dedication and with compassion. This, in spite of rampant communication and cultural barriers, all amidst the backdrop of one of the most controversial wars in history. My mother remembers that many Vietnamese had never seen an apple before, and they were so grateful to experience a fruit so exotic and delectable. There are countless Americans as well who sponsored refugee families and helped us to acclimate to this country. This includes Colonel Keith Nightingale of Ojai, California, whose family embraced and sponsored my family, a man who served 2 tours in Vietnam, graduated from airborne, jumpmaster, and ranger schools, commanded 4 rifle companies, 3 battalions, and 2 brigades. Or Dr. Art and Lillian Denier of Fullerton, California, another sponsor family who welcomed many young Vietnamese children into their home and introduced us to the joys of putting tinsel on a Charlie Brown Christmas tree and instilled in me an undying love of grilled cheese and apple pie. Dearest veterans, because of your sacrifices, this American dream and many hundreds and thousands of others for generations to come will be realized. I've written a poem that I hope in some way enables you to grasp the extent of gratitude that should be bestowed to you today and always. How do you pay tribute to the men and women whose impact on our lives has been so very clear? How does a speech or a poem ever truly honor the legacy of those who chose the military as a career? Is it altruism? Is it bravery? What drives you to such a life of honor? To face danger and adversity, to sacrifice of yourself for the freedoms of another. You've seen the unfathomable. You've endured as no one should. Monuments and regimes have crumbled, but your spirit and your loyalty have withstood. For those who were embraced by a unified nation, full of ticker tape parades, to those who suffered at the hands of an ungrateful nation, only to be betrayed. We can't begin to understand your experiences. We dare not to have such hubris. We are simply grateful to have your honored presence today amongst us. A friendly rivalry spans between all 5 branches, but no delineation exists when the call of duty commences. As the national anthem begins, it takes all of my willpower to remain standing and not to collapse and kiss the ground of this nation I am so grateful to be in. We owe you our gratitude and herald the freedoms for which you have arduously fought and won. And this room gathers to demonstrate that we will today and always stand with you united as one. I chose to share my personal story today because I stand here quite certain that mine is just simply one of thousands that need to be told. Whether one is a natural-born citizen or a refugee, we must honor and remember our veterans' sacrifices. I remembered you when I went to elementary school in Anaheim and belted out America the Beautiful with all the love and pride I could muster, despite my slight accent. I remembered you when I was blessed enough to attend one of the top schools in the nation, UC Irvine, determined thereafter to open my own nonprofit and pay it forward in honor of all those that gave in my time of need. I remember you when I was standing incredulously on the field of Angels Baseball Stadium and saw myself on the Jumbotron shooting t-shirts into the stands comprised of thousands of hopeful Americans heralding one of the nation's greatest pastimes. I remembered you when I was afforded the opportunity to work for 3 of our nation's top Fortune 100 companies, Ingram, Microsoft, and the Walt Disney Company, all of which enabled me to leverage their community resource programs to honor our veterans. And I remember the family members of our veterans who struggled and sacrificed in your absence, or whose pain and loss are etched in memorials throughout this country. As Ronald Reagan once said, we will always remember, we will always be proud, we will always be prepared so that we may always be free. To my good friend John Latosquin, who joins us today, a sergeant of the Marine Corps and a law enforcement officer of 20 years, having participated in Ingram Micro's Veterans Day events for many years past. To First Sergeant Bill Waters, with whom I began my career with at Ingram Micro here back in 1998 in technical support, and instrumental to having created this event that we are participating in today. To the both of you, I attribute this other quote from the Gipper. Some people wonder all their lives if they've made a difference. The Marines don't have that problem. I hope what I have conveyed here today is the impact of veterans, active military, and the countless giving Americans in this blessed nation. Due to your compassion and sacrifices, myself and so many others continue to live and pursue the American dream and will give back similarly until the day we cease to breathe. And with this, I'd like to end with just a touch of humor. As my father was learning the nuances of the English language, he would accidentally use the terms potluck and jackpot interchangeably. Dearest veterans, because of you, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it's not simply a catchphrase, it's my reality. Because of you, I have truly hit the potluck.